Well, it's great to be back in Jacksonville. We were hoping that it would be the preparation for the AFC Championship game, but it was a great run, and we were able to. I was actually out there, and Arrowhead, tough place to play. I'll tell you what, really great football environment for big home field advantage. But I think that there's a lot of bright days ahead for the Jags here. I think the community really rallied. I think they had a lot of great players. And so it's just one of those things where you can see that there's going to be some opportunities going forward. So it's a tough loss, but at the end of the day, you got some young talent, and I think the days are going to be really good going forward. So that's something to be excited for. We're also excited to be here for announcing a great series of initiatives with respect to education. And I'm joined here by our Education Commissioner, Manny Diaz. I'm joined here by one of our school board members, Charlotte Joyce from Duval County. I'm joined here by Clay County teacher and 2023 Florida Teacher of the Year, Melissa Ann Matz. I'm also joined by Duval County teacher Leah Hannigan, and then Representatives Michael and Black, as well as Senator Clay Yarborough. We've worked really hard since I've been governor to put an emphasis on education really across the board. I think if you look at what we've done to support workforce education, the idea that not everyone needs to go to a four-year university, that there are good pathways that can even be better for people, whether it means elevating American civics as being something that's important for our students to learn, whether it's empowering parents through the ability to exercise parental choice, and whether it means really supporting good teachers and making sure we can recruit and retain really high-quality teachers so that our students have great leadership in the classroom. And since I've been governor, we've increased funding by over $2 billion to raise teacher salaries in the state of Florida. One of the things we wanted to do, because you hear a lot, you hear a little bit more of it now, but we recognized this many years ago, the ability to attract people and fill positions. So you'll hear people talk about there's a nationwide shortage of teachers. I can tell you in the nationwide average is 3 vacancies for every school. Florida is 1.6 vacancies for every school. So we're below the national average because we've put a lot of emphasis on it. And one of the things we did is he said, people they go to college. Some of them may have loans. You shouldn't have loans if you go to a state university here because we have very low tuition. But in others, you may have loans. So you got to figure out, okay, what are your options? And going into teaching, not that you do it for the money, but you want to make that as attractive as possible. So we worked hard to raise the average minimum salary across the state of Florida. It was basically not even $40,000 when I became governor, and now with the recent increases we did in this current year's budget, it's going to be over $48,000 today as the average minimum salary across the state. And of course, there are parts of the state where it's higher than that, particularly areas where the cost of living is higher. There's some that are lower than that at a much lower cost of living, but that's the average, and that's been a lot of emphasis to be able to do that. We've also done things like offer teachers the ability, if they do additional training in areas that we think are important, like civics. They do our civics program. They get a $3,000 bonus for going through and earning a civic seal of excellence. And so we want to make sure that we're focused on what's important, but then if teachers are doing what they need to do to be the best they can be, then we want to reward that. So we were able to do that, and that has been something that's very good. We also eliminated Common Core my first year as governor. We eliminated the FSA, and we now have progress monitoring. They used to spend so much time on this one end-of-the-year test, and the problem is if there's deficiencies, everyone's gone for the summer. You can't even rectify. So our progress monitoring evaluates students periodically throughout the school year. It's not as voluminous. It's more targeted. It's quicker. But it gives parents, teachers, and students feedback so that they're able to make adjustments as need be on a case basis. And so this is the first, last year was the last year of FSA. This is first year progress monitoring, and I think it's going to be something that's going to be very, very good, and I know a lot of teachers were very, very excited. we wanted to make sure that we continue the momentum on teacher compensation. One of the things that I did working with the legislature is, Florida funds education. We have an education financing program. A lot of money gets sent down to the school districts, and then they figure out kind of how they want to do it. So you could increase education funding. Doesn't mean they're going to raise teacher pay. They may use it for other things. And so what we said is, as part of our education funding in the state of Florida, we're going to create a special category of that funding that has to go to raise teacher salaries. So we created this provision in our budget in the Florida Education Finance Program. I think the first year was like $500 million that had to go for teacher salaries. At that time, it was an emphasis on raising the average minimum, with the remaining going to teacher salaries across the board, how the districts wanted to do it. Now, we're in a position where in our budget we will have, and we'll work with the legislature to take that money that has to go to increase teacher salaries. We started off at $500 million. This year we'll have $1 billion in that teacher categorical program. Since we've already met our goal of average minimum salary, all that additional money can go to increase teacher salaries however the districts want to do it, and we think that that's important to both recruit and retain good people in the classroom. So with that proposal and getting that into the budget and hopefully being able to make that law, we will have invested more than $3 billion in increased teacher salaries since the year 2020, and that's never been done in this state's history at that level before. So we're proud that we're able to do that, and we want to continue the momentum with that. Pay is part of what you're talking about with education, particularly for teachers, but it's not the only thing. And one of the things is teachers, you talk about, students have rights. We talk a lot about parents having rights, and that's very important, but teachers really need to have rights in terms of them managing classrooms and being able to do what they need to do. So one of the things we're going to be proposing and working with the legislature on is a series of what we're calling teacher empowerment, almost like a teacher's Bill of Rights. We want to make sure that teachers that are doing their job well are protected and are able to do that without fear of any reprisals. And so we will be establishing a new process for individuals to notify the state if a teacher's rights have been violated, and we will ensure that our Florida Department of Education can investigate those complaints very quickly. We also want to empower teachers to maintain safe classroom learning environments. Teachers should not be at fault if you have kids fighting or being disruptive. A teacher has every right to ensure discipline and to ensure a safe learning environment. And I think sometimes teachers feel they will end up being the bad guy just by making sure that the kids are behaving. We want to make sure that the teachers are protected. I mean, honestly, it shouldn't even be up, their role to have to do this, but we see that that's something that happens because we have discipline that probably isn't where it needs to be. So they will have the ability to do that. They will have a presumption that they acted appropriately. We want to make sure that everyone feels safe and everyone can learn, and we don't want disruptions to ruin the learning experience for everybody else. We also want to make sure, because we've seen this happen over the past couple years, there may be the state of Florida legislate certain policies into law. There may be certain school boards or school districts who don't necessarily like some of those policies. Today, we're a state and a country and a society based on the rule of law. So if you don't like the policies that are enacted by the legislature, signed by the governor, you have an election every 2 years where you can go and make your voice heard. There's a lot of complaints about some of the things we did, like parental rights in most areas, but in some. And the issue is, a teacher is faced with either following state law or listening to a school board or a school union or an administrator telling them to violate state law. If they follow state law, they're protected. They should not be put in a situation where they're being told they have to violate clear policies of the state of Florida that are enacted in statute. And so these protections will include that. Now that if you're following the law, you are good to go. And it doesn't matter if a school board or a superintendent thinks otherwise. I think we're going to have less of that going forward this year because I think, quite frankly, we've elected a lot of people to school boards across the state who are not going to want to behave in that fashion. But nevertheless, that's just the case. We'd also encourage some of these school districts and the new school board members to lean in onto teacher empowerment, to ensure good learning environments. I don't know if it's something that the state would legislate, but I think to myself, why are these kids on their phones during class all the time? I mean, I think a school district would be totally within their rights to say, you know what, leave your phone in some cubby or something, go sit in class, learn, and then if you get it at recess and you want to text people, fine, but they should not be always on their phones being distracted from the lessons. And so I think that our school boards will be able to lean in on some stuff too to buttress what we're doing, and I look forward to being able to do that. We also are going to be advancing proposals to make sure that teachers' paychecks are protected. They are not going to have, if we do these reforms, automatic deduction for school union dues. That's your choice. If you want to do it, send money. That's fine. But to have it automatically deducted when you sign an authorization form, they don't even tell you how much is being deducted. That's not right. So we want more transparency into how that is done. And we believe that a school union has a responsibility to notify the members of the costs of membership. We also believe that you should not have the school be a focus of school union politics and politicking and handing out literature and doing all that stuff. You do that on your own time, not on the public's time. We also believe that, and it will be reflected in this proposal, if you're somebody that's working for a school union, you should not make any more than what the highest paid teacher is making. And that's just, you have these people making huge amounts of money and the teachers are making half of that amount of money. How is that fair? How is that something that makes sense? And so having partisan groups basically get special privileges for deductions and all these other stuff, that doesn't work. And so I think this will be a huge boon for transparency and efficiency in our school system. We also are looking at school boards for reforms. We did do the 12-year school board term limits. I think it should be 8-year term limits. I mean, the fact of the matter is you get in there, you have ideas, 8 years is enough to get your ideas in and to see some of the successes or maybe things you may need to change. Some of the people that are there, when you get in there for 20 years, you become entrenched. And so I'm a big believer in term limits across the board. I think we need it for Congress. I think we need it in a lot of different areas. I think our legislature works better because we have term limits, but the 12 years, better than nothing, but I think we can do better. So we're going to end up doing 8-year term limits for that. The members of the legislature are going to be working on this, require amending the state constitution, but the Constitution prohibits any type of party label on school board. And yet they're electing people to school board who are like totally the opposite philosophy, but those people are running saying that they're sharing the philosophy, then they get on and they do something different. And sometimes it's hard without knowing because you have all these names on a ballot. So we want transparency. We want people to be able to do what they think is best and educating voters to the maximum degree. That school unions are not exerting excessive influence. And I'll just note, We passed our most recent teacher pay increase. The legislature passed it last March. I signed it into law probably sometime in May. And even to this day, not every school district has raised the teacher salaries like they're required to do. Some waited until after the election. Some have just now done it. And a lot of this is with school unions playing games with a lot of this stuff. That is wrong. When you have money on the table to be able to increase teacher pay, that should be the first thing you're trying to do to get that money out. And so I think we're going to work to see, this money, this $1 billion, we may say you need to use this by a certain point or lose it, because this haggling over it and keeping the teachers and their salary increases hostage for other issues, I just think is wrong, and I think it hurts teachers when we need to be helping teachers. So I'm excited about this. No one would have thought just a few years ago that we'd be sitting here talking about having done over $3 billion potentially in salary increases. And so it's been a long road. It's been a lot of hard work, but I think ultimately it's something that's very, very important. You can have one teacher can make a huge difference in the lives of these students, and we're recognizing that, and we're going to make sure we do everything to make Florida continue to be the education state. And if you just look, you want proof in the pudding on that, most recent NAEP scores, Nations Report Card 2022, first post-COVID report card, Florida number 3 and 4 respectively for 4th grade reading and 4th grade math in the country. And if you control for demographics, we're number 1 in both of those. That doesn't happen by accident, because we got a lot of people that are working really hard to help the next generation. Okay, we're going to hear from some other folks. So we'll start with Commissioner of Education, Manny Diaz.
Thank you, Governor. And I'm fortunate to serve in this position, and we're all lucky to live in the state of Florida with the actual education governor, Governor Ron DeSantis. Thank you, Governor, for all you've done. But this is amazing when we're talking about a $1 billion investment directly for teacher salaries. I mean, before the governor got into the office, this didn't exist. The money just went down. Districts decided how to split it up. The governor led in making sure we created a categorical that now will be, like the governor mentioned, $3 billion going directly to teachers. So when you talk about education, supporting parent rights, school choice and students, and teachers' rights, not only making sure that there is the proper pay, and this governor has not only talked the talk, but walked the walk by putting this initiative in place and continuing to double down and invest directly in our teachers. And so what we need is for those that are obstructing this, whether school unions or administrations, to get out of the way and make sure that these dollars go directly into the teachers' pocketbooks immediately. We shouldn't be waiting for teachers to receive that money. But beyond that, as the governor mentioned, it's not only about pay. It's about the regard for teachers, the respect for teachers. And having been in the classroom, I can tell you that having the feeling that someone has your back, the governor has your back, and you are able to perform your duties and teach these students, maintain discipline, and do your job. This is what parents want. This is what parents send their kids to school for. And so this is an incredible initiative to not only protect our teachers in the classroom, to make sure they can make decisions, but the fact that we even have to do this to make sure that teachers are able to follow the law without repercussions is crazy. But here we are, and I'm so glad to have Governor DeSantis' bold leadership to do this, along with paycheck protection. Look, if you want to be part of an association, of a union, of whatever, the government shouldn't be in the role of collecting. Why is the government collecting these dues? In today's day and age, those dues can be paid, but the person needs to be aware that they're participating, how much is being taken from their paycheck, and what are they getting in return? What are they getting in return? Because I will tell you, I can tell you what the governor has done for these teachers, and that's going to be a total of $3 billion over the last few years. I can't say the same for everybody else. It's also important to have the transparency and the clear line of when you are at a school, you're in the business of teaching and learning, not in the business of politics. And that goes for either side. All of that stuff should be kept out of the school building, and it should go back to teaching and learning. So I not only applaud and incredibly have support for this initiative, these initiatives, Governor, but I just want to highlight again that despite some of these myths and narratives, you're definitely the education governor, and you continue to lead. Thank you, Governor DeSantis. I'm so lucky to be in Florida.
Okay, our Teacher of the Year, Melissa Ann Matz.
It is an honor to stand before you today with Governor DeSantis as the 2023 Florida Teacher of the Year. We are so fortunate to live in such an amazing state with a governor who truly prioritizes quality education. My journey here has been a very unique one, and it proves how Florida is top state for educators. After graduating from college in Iowa, I attended the Great Florida Teach-In, where it allows people like myself who want to become teachers in Florida to interview with school districts and also be able to get jobs. From that day forward, my life launched on an incredible journey of success. I came to Florida to be a teacher. Receiving my first job in Clay County, I have been here my entire career. Being named the 2023 Florida Teacher of the Year has truly been the greatest honor. It's an exciting time to teach in Florida, and under Governor DeSantis, Florida is setting the standard for the rest of the nation. Student assessment results are climbing, and student achievement gaps are closing. Florida has made a record investment in school safety and resiliency, student literacy, civics, and the workforce education. Per student spending is at an all-time high. And with today's announcement, Governor DeSantis is proposing to continue to make record-breaking investments in teacher pay. The teacher salary increase allocation shows that Florida values teachers. And Governor DeSantis repeatedly makes good on his promises by securing more funding for teachers year after year. And not just for new teachers, but for veteran teachers like me. Educators in Florida are elevated and celebrated. And my journey is proof of that. Teaching is the greatest job in the world, and I became a teacher to better the lives of my students. Teaching in Florida is an opportunity of a lifetime. Thank you, Governor, for truly making Florida the education state.
Okay, we have another teacher from right here in Duval County, Miss Hannigan.
Thank you, Governor, for your commitment to public education, our teachers, and the kids that are underneath our care. My name is Leah Hannigan, and I'm a reading and math interventionist at Cornerstone Classical Academy, a charter school right here in Duval County. I have previously worked as an elementary school teacher for Duval County Public Schools since 2005. I became a teacher because I want to inspire children. I love seeing those aha moments on their faces when they grasp a concept and experience that academic success. Having witnessed many changes over the course of my career, I've realized more and more that teachers throughout our public school system are not always getting the appropriate support they need from district administration. What I experienced myself and what I've witnessed from my teaching colleagues was often the union and district taking our crucial role of teaching and elevating our students and then changing that role to that of political pawns for, frankly, many things that simply contradicted at times best educational practices. This has never been more clear than with the many challenges that we faced during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, I was made to enforce subjective policies that were not in the best interest of our students, policies that directly contracted the law and contradicted what we knew as educators to be best. It put teachers in the middle of a political battle that made it more and more difficult for us to undertake our primary responsibilities as educators, which is educating the children. As a first grade teacher at the time of the pandemic, my 6- and 7-year-olds were made to socially distance in the classroom and even on the playground with zones. The district policy had me remove a couch and pillows from a reading nook in my classroom, as it would have prevented those young students from maintaining that 6 feet apart. Anyone who knows anything about small children knows that this is not going to work. They're not going to stay apart from each other, regardless of what we do as teachers. They're going to hug their friends. They're going to hug you. They're going to play and sit closely on the playground. And I felt like this policy went on for far too long. It wasn't rooted in what was actually best for students. Rather, it was politics and show, and it was left to the teachers to enforce those new COVID protocols or face reprimand. While despite the imperfect realities we were fighting, I know that other protocols had been more significant and detrimental effects in our classrooms. While teaching phonics, I had to wear a face shield or mask, or even at one time, both, that was required, while my young students as well had to be masked. I know they were being inhibited from learning because of district policies that was taking the flexibility away from the teachers and the parents, the ones that know them the best. These policies and lack of implicit support from our district drove me out of a public school classroom. I no longer had faith in my employer, that they had the best interest of students in mind. At my current charter school, I am free to choose to wear a mask or not wear a mask. Social distancing and quarantining of healthy children because of proximity are foreign terms, and my voice as an experienced educator is heard. There is a universal failure to support educators when we needed help the most. These protections are long overdue to ensure we are supported in what is doing right for our students. With these proposals from the governor, teachers are now being offered protections, and I'm so grateful that Governor DeSantis is defining those rights for educators. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for standing up for us and ensuring we can be the best teachers possible so that every kid can get the education that they deserve.
Okay, Charlotte Joyce, Duval County School Board.
Good morning. My name is Charlotte Joyce, and I represent Duval County Public Schools District 6. Along with my constituents, I am very happy to say that I live in the free state of Florida. Before I was elected to the school board, I was a teacher in the Duval County Public School System. Right now, I have many of my close friends and former colleagues that are teachers in the Duval County Public School System and are in the bargaining unit in Duval County. What I have seen and noticed is that the unions are not protecting our teachers, from Washington, D.C., all the way down to the state level, to the national, our local communities. Unions are failing our teachers. During the pandemic, we saw the teachers' unions advocate strongly for mask mandates and for vaccinations. Because of our great governor, he just put a stop to that and said, we're not going to have that in the state of Florida. As a board member, during that time, there was an MOU that was brought to the board. And in that MOU, eventually it mandated that teachers would have to be vaccinated. During that vote, 6 of our 7 board members were present. It was a 3-3 vote, a tie, so evidently it lost. It didn't pass. And at the end of that meeting, I had a teacher walk up to me, literally shaking, and with tears in her eyes, thanking me for voting no. She loved her job and she loved teaching, but she would leave the profession if she had to be vaccinated. We are increasingly seeing that teachers' unions are becoming more and more involved in politics, and they are not advocating for the rank and file of their members. This last election, we had over $100,000 from teacher union money put into a campaign against a former school board member who advocated strongly for mask mandates and vaccinations, and as chair, initiated a lawsuit against the governor and his COVID-19 protections. Right now, currently, in the state of Florida, there are teachers who are due a salary increase, but because of teachers' unions, they haven't received them. Superintendents and school boards are being held hostage because we can't give the teachers the raises that they deserve. This is not just unfortunate, this is unacceptable. And as a former teacher, I want to thank you, Governor DeSantis, for protecting the rights and freedoms of our Florida teachers.
Well, so we've got a lot of good stuff here. We're going to be working really hard in the ensuing weeks and months to bring it to reality. But I think we've got a lot of great momentum. I think we've delivered a lot of great results, and we want to just continue that. So this is just another step in the direction that we've been taking. So I look forward to working with the folks in the legislature and getting it all done. Okay. Yes, sir.
Governor, on the AP African this is exactly what we were fearing with the individual freedom bill. I don't know if you or the commissioner could maybe expand a little bit more about.
Sure. I mean, I think so. As you know, in the state of Florida, our education standards not only don't prevent, but they require teaching Black history, all the important things. That's part of our core curriculum. This was a separate course on top of that for advanced placement credit. And the issue is we have guidelines and standards in Florida. We want education, not indoctrination. If you fall on the side of indoctrination, we're going to decline. If it's education, then we will do. This course, so when I heard it didn't meet the standards, I figured, yeah, they may be doing serious. It's way more than that. This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids. And so when you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda. And so that's the wrong side of the line for Florida standards. We believe in teaching kids facts and how to think, but we don't believe they should have an agenda imposed on them. When you try to use Black history to shoehorn in queer theory, you are clearly trying to use that for political purposes. Yes, ma'am.
One of the AP studies that course parts have been listed as concerning is the topic of movements for Black lives. Can you describe what about that is concerning? Some people are calling
Is that with the abolishing prisons? Is that part of the? So if you read actually what's in there, they're advocating things like abolishing prisons. Now that's a radical political position. You're free to take that in your own life. I don't think very many people would think that would actually work. But how is that being taught as fact to be able to do that? And I also think it's not fair to say that somehow abolishing prisons is somehow linked to like Black experience, that that's what Black people want. I don't think that's true at all. I think they want law and order, just like anybody else wants law and order. So that is more of ideology being used under the guise of history, and we want to do history. And that's what our standards for Black history are. It's just cut and dried history. You learn all the basics, you learn about the great figures, and I view it as American history. I don't view it as separate history. We have history, a lot of different shapes and sizes. People that have participated to make the country great, people that have stood up when it wasn't easy, and they all deserve to be taught. But abolishing prisons, being taught to high school kids as if that's somehow a fact, no, that's not appropriate.
The Parental Rights and Education Act, which some people say is unfairly nicknamed Don't Say Gay. I've interviewed Floridians, and over the holidays I interviewed Texans and people from Ohio. And they're under the impression that the law applies to all schools and all grades. But when you read the bill says it only applies to not teach gender identity or sexual orientation from kindergarten to 3rd grade. And when I tell these people this, mostly even liberals agree. Oh yeah, if it's only elementary school, that's fair. But a lot of people are under the impression that's all grade levels.
Well, look, no.
So for the commissioner and you, do you feel there's poor messaging from your office or from the legislature telling the people the real facts about the law so people don't get confused?
I don't think it's poor messaging. I mean, I think you have corporate outlets, media outlets, who push agendas. And in Florida, everyone was very clear on it. I mean, some may not be, but I think the election results were a good determination that those narratives, those false narratives, were rejected by Floridians because we've been getting them for years and years. Everything we do is a false narrative, and then a couple weeks later, months later, people just move on and like, yeah, what the governor was right on that when he said that. So that's just kind of been the pattern. How corporate media projects this outside of our borders was just not something that was necessarily as pertinent to us because we're governing this state here. But I think that it's instructive to look at that element and then ask yourself, any of the stuff we're doing with the schools, you're talking about this AP course, if they're telling you something that seems like, wow, that seems a little off. Do you think that they're telling you the full story, or do you think that they're trying to shade that in a way to advance their agenda? And I would say 9 times out of 10, they're shading it to try to advance whatever agenda they may have. And so that's just the nature of it. But, we're going to continue to do what's right. And I think one of the things people can count on me for is that if you're looking for me to stand up for you, I am not going to be swayed by false media narratives.
So people feel that that part of the reason why your office or legislature has not messaged this out clearly to the people, it's because you want to appeal to the crowd that are really, really anti-gay.
It has nothing to do with that. First of all, having any sexual content in elementary school is inappropriate. It's wrong. And yes, I mean, I think the gender ideology is something that is very problematic when you have very young kids, and if you have a teacher saying, well, what gender would you like to be? No, that is not these are impressionable kids. You're trying to tell them that somehow they can just switch to be a different gender. So that's wrong. So I think some of it can be incredibly harmful. And but at the end of the day, it's not about individuals, adults, whatever. It's about what are you teaching to very young kids? Should we be focusing on gender ideology, or should we be focusing on math and reading and all the things that are really, really important? And I think most people think we should be focusing on the latter, not the former. That's just the reality. And look, underlying all these kind of political back and forths on education, it's not just K-12, it's also higher ed we see it. What is the purpose of our education system, whether it's an elementary school or whether it's a public university? Some say the purpose of it is to train students in a certain worldview, to use schools as an instrument of what they consider social justice and social change. There's others, which Florida believes, that it's really about education in the classical sense. It's about the pursuit of truth. It's about teaching kids how to think. It's about presenting facts to them and then letting them draw conclusions. And so there's a disagreement in our society about what the purpose is. I can tell you most universities in this country have gone in the direction of using education for ideology and for politics, and they've moved away from education in the classical sense. We believe in that education as a classical sense. We believe it can be liberating for people to go through that. And how tired is it to sit there and think that just imposing some rote talking points from whatever the political skirmishes of the day are, that is a lasting form of education? I don't think it is at all. But when you're talking about things that are larger issues that have enduring relevance, those are things students will be able to carry with them for the rest of their lives. And so that's how we're approaching all of these issues. And I think if you start from that foundation, then something like gender ideology for a second grader, of course you wouldn't do that. That's political. That's an agenda. That's not something that is really going to stand the test of time. Okay, guys, thanks so much. Take care.